In my head, I just always wanted to be an artisan because, doing stuff with your hands is really fun. Just feels a bit magical to be able to create something.
Every instrument carries a story waiting to be heard.
Just close enough to cause that clash.
I'm David Lian, and this is The Instrument Makers, a YouTube series where we visit diverse instrument workshops,
Bravo.
explore the artistry and techniques of master artisans,
Nice, that was gorgeous. That was so fun.
and share the remarkable journeys and insights we discover along the way.
Does not always look like it's going well, even though it is.
Today I'm in Singapore to visit Doran, who makes weird custom cymbals for drum sets. And most unique are their Crumply cymbals.
Hi, I'm Doran, and this is my Crumply Crush 18.
Their viral social media marketing has allowed these cymbals to be sold around the world with a several-month waiting period. Join me as we jam out on Chick Korea, learn about Doran's accidental path to making cymbals, their process of making, and the challenges of being a queer artisan in an industrialized and hyper-modern city-country that is Singapore. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out my website to read some behind the scenes. You can support this passion project by visiting my Ko-fi page, where you can buy merch such as stickers, sheet music, and guitar picks, and some curated and rare Japanese instruments, such as a Suzuki bowback mandolin or taishokoto. All right, hello. Can you tell me who are you and where are we right now in the world?
I am Doran. We're currently in Singapore, and I'm an instrument maker. I make cymbals and do miscellaneous music things.
You make very specific cymbals, is that right? Mm-hmm. In fact, we're sitting in front of some of them right now.
These are not the only type of cymbals that I make, but these cymbals in particular have a thingy called the Crumply bell. So cymbals have this thingy in the center that's sort of like a bell shape. And they're usually sort of more or less an even shape, but mine have a very, very distorted one. And that sort of changes the tone of it, kills your high end, rather attenuates it, and it also gives you several tones depending on how you hammer it. And yeah.
Is crumbly like a technical term that is universal, or did you make it up?
It's my thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
Sort of,
because it does look crumbly, you just...
Yeah. So technically it started when I was 3 years old. Went to Yamaha music school, the usual Singaporean shebang.
Playing drums?
No. I started off with piano first. Yeah. I mean, Yamaha is like piano / singing because they're like, holistic education and vocals, whatever. Solfege and all that stuff. Was not really serious about music until sort of a long time later, actually. Music, strangely. Like in Singapore, a lot of people are more practical and like people are like, you gotta do STEM, right? And then when you wanna chase like something like music, you sort of need to fight your parents for it. But that wasn't the case for me because my father is a musician. He does like Peranakan cultural stuff. Peranakan is like a subset of Chinese people that are like sort of, they love Malay culture, so it's like a weird like intertwining of it.
Okay.
And then later on in like Polytechnic, then I sort of picked up flute and drums like just for fun, like by myself.
Okay.
Yeah, and at that point I was making basses.
You're making basses?
Yeah, I was making basses first, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So for the diploma, I did like pop performance, primarily on keyboard, but then I got frustrated with the teacher, and then in my third year I switched to bass. And then after that I studied composition. So I see during that stuff actually, like I was making basses, and like how that one started was my brother was looking in like a music shop, right? And then he was like, wow, that guitar's so nice, I want. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then I looked at the price tag, and then it was like $3,000. I was like, what? For a guitar? Like, it can't be that hard to make a guitar. Right? And then I was like, it can't be that hard to make a guitar. And then I went to make one. And then I asked him like, hey, Darius is his name. Darius, can I build you a guitar? And then he went, no. And I was like, oh, alright. So I built myself a bass instead.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait.
flute, drums,
Flute,
piano.
drums, piano, drums. Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
Oh
This is rough for both of us.
Okay.
We might it's okay. Okay. How did this lead into cymbal making?
Yes. So if you are a Singaporean, in Singapore we don't have a lot of space, and if you do something crafty, you're like, what? You're doing crafting in Singapore? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, how are you doing it, right? So I mean, I operate very scrappily. I have my tools in my living room, and I work in the staircase of my like HDB apartment. I was making a bass for my dissertation, and then this guy, his name is Aaron James Lee. He's like a local jazz drummer guy, quite renowned in the scene. And then like he just happens to be my classmate. And then one day he just comes up to me and says, "Hey Doran, you make basses, right? Why not make cymbals?" And then I was like, why not make cymbals? That sounds really cool actually. Because like with basses you can sort of see like, you know, strings, wood, pickup, quite straightforward. Right, not really, but yeah. But with cymbals you're like, what? Why does it sound different?
Yeah.
How do they make the hammering marks look like that? Right? What's the process? I just couldn't figure it out. And then like the more I thought about it, the more I was like, cymbal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cymbals. So I assumed you had to do quite a lot of research to figure this, like how cymbals work and all that?
When I started doing this stuff, it was maybe like 4 years ago, so around 2022. And there's this like super good resource for cymbals, right? It's called Cymbalholic.
Oh.
And then they died in COVID, right? That was my only resource. It's gone, right? So what I did instead was there exists like very, very little information out there. So I ended up raw dogging it. I just bought some cheap cymbals and then just like
started going ham on it.
Yeah, I bought like 3 hammers and then like a small little jeweler's anvil off of Amazon. And then I just started going. Right?
Okay.
And then I would just like go like, okay, if I hammer this, what happens? And then I found my own theory and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me briefly what you do to the cymbals normally. You hammer it. Besides hammering it, what I mean.
There's a lot of theory behind hammering.
Okay.
Basically, like when you hammer a cymbal, you are giving it shape, and the shape defines the sound. Okay, I was making cymbals for a while, right? Before like the whole like thing sort of got going a bit.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that happened was like here at the music school, Rubato Music, right?
Yeah.
A bit different to other music schools because we employ like a social media marketing like strategy, right? So I was like doing that like at work, and then I was like, this could work for cymbals. And then after that I just tried, and then it was like, oh, okay, that's not bad. Yeah.
At first you're making cymbals for yourself or for others?
Mostly for myself. I mean, it was just like exploration, right? Because I had no idea what hammering did. I had no idea how to like design cymbals until I
So at what point did you start like selling cymbals to other people and maybe abroad? So
initially when I started making, maybe around like the 1.5 to 2 year mark, there was some friends that were like, hey, they sound pretty nice. And I was like, oh, okay. And then they asked me to make some for them. I'm like, okay, sure. Halfway during my experimentation, I chanced upon the Crumply thing. And then like, I was like, okay, this feels like a pretty good unique selling point. So I started like, you know, showing that thing. Right now, I'm working on commission basis, and then there's like a sort of like 4 to 5 month wait.
Oh wow.
Yeah, cause I'm like juggling like like my job here.
Yeah.
And then I also gig a bit. And then like it's just a lot of time, right? So like the amount of energy I have to like also shoot the social media stuff, right? It's like a bit crazy. So my capacity isn't the biggest as I would like it to be.
It makes you more in demand.
I suppose so. Yeah, there's like a bunch of people asking like, hey, can you, you know, do you have any stock? And then I'm like, shit, I'm sorry, I don't have any stock because they keep selling out, which is a good problem.
That is a good problem.
Yeah.
Then how long does it take for you to like finish a cymbal?
From start to finish, I'd say like minimum 3 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because it's like I would say like the actual like hammering and stuff is not that much because when it comes to cymbal making, less is more. Like basically the more you hammer a cymbal, the less sustain you have, and you still want them to have a sustain, right? So most of the time when cymbalistas hammer, like less is more. And you also need to wait for the metal to rest between hammering sessions, like around like a week in between the hammering sessions just to hear how it opens up. So you need to wait between like hammering sessions, and then after that the patina process also takes some time. If you like, I have like some processes that take like 2 months just to go, yeah, because I do like layering and all sorts of funny stuff. The biggest issue is space.
Okay.
Yeah. Space is so expensive in this tiny, expensive ass island.
Yeah.
And to find a space that allows you to make things, because making things entails like noise, dust.
Do you get complaints from neighbors?
I used to when I used to hammer at home.
Oh.
And it wasn't neighbors, it was my father. I mean, I get it, right? It's nicey.
Your dad was the one complaining?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like, okay, Singapore is always behind the trend when it comes to like aesthetics and things. So like I feel like that aesthetic hasn't come here yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you feel like you're ahead in the aesthetics?
I mean, no. I feel like my cymbals are a bit more catered towards the whole like modern drum sound, right? And then I just think that like with Singapore's art scene, there's not much of that, because here in Singapore, it's very impractical to be an artist. You have to actively like struggle to be an artist. I mean, I'm sure it's the same anywhere, but it's like bonkers here because, you know, in my head I just always wanted to be an artisan, because you know, doing stuff with your hands is really fun, and it just feels a bit magical to be able to create something. Like the moment that had me kicking my feet for like a week straight was when JD Beck asked me to like make him cymbals. And then I was like, oh,
who's
JD
this?
Beck. He's like,
You gotta tell me.
he's like a super modern drummer guy, yeah.
Oh, who asked you?
JD Beck.
Oh my god! He's so cool. He's so good.
Yeah.
You should follow up and maybe
Yeah, maybe I'll poke him.
like, do you still want a cymbal?
Yeah.
Okay, if you want one now, it's gonna be in 1 year wait. It's like, oh yeah, it's gonna be worth it. What are some of the things that you feel make your cymbals unique or superior?
Okay, superior.
Unique. How do you make it? How do you feel like your cymbals stand out?
So, what a lot of the people who I mentioned do is that they try and aim for the cymbal market that loves the jazz sound, because the primary reason why the main cymbalsmith market thing even started off was cymbals. In last time, right, cymbals were only made handmade. Even the ones from Zildjian were imported from Istanbul. And so during that period of time, what was famous? Jazz, right? Jazz was the main music. And so those cymbals that were super handmade and had a really interesting sound became the jazz sound. And when cymbals started becoming, you know, more production line, people started using like machines to do it. Some of them don't even have a human touch anymore. Yeah. Right? There's all sorts of like inefficiencies in the cymbal design. Right? And that general thing left a lot of people jaded. So when people discovered like, wait, you can make a thing by hand and like have it nice, right? Those jazz people would sort of, you know, gravitate towards those makers. And so the difference in approach is that I don't give a shit about jazz. Like my cymbals are not like, I don't want to sound like that old song, right? We call it the old K, which is like sort of like a chase for the old K is like a line of cymbals that existed back then, and people chase that song. And I don't cater to that chase, along with like another maker called PGB in Montreal. Yeah, it's another one who also like we don't really care about that song. Okay. Yeah, like sure our things may share some similarities in that, like, you know, the darker cymbals.
But it's not the focus.
But it's not the focus, We want a bit more of a modern, like weird kind of sound that you will never find from like any other manufacturer kind of thing. So this guy is an 18-inch like cymbal. It has a press bell and a slight curvature to it. So basically we have the top side of the cymbal, we have the edge, the bow, and the bell, and then we have the bottom side. So if you hammer on the bottom, it's gonna loosen the cymbal. And if you hammer on the top, it's gonna tighten the cymbal. So what this results in is things like just how much the cymbal can easily like vibrate. So if I hit it now, right, you see this edge vibrating, and it opens up relatively easily. So if you hammer it from the bottom, it's gonna make that softer, that looser, sorry, and it's gonna drop the pitch a bit, and it's also gonna make the overall profile of the cymbal a bit higher. So I don't know if you can see, but right now the profile is...
Oh, it's pretty flat.
Yeah, it's very, very flat. And this cymbal right now, let's investigate. Huh? You hear that there's a lot of tones going on. You can hear that there's like notes, right? Yeah. Like very gongy. And a big thing to do with that is if your thingy is flat, and it's not tensioned correctly, you're gonna have tones in it. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna just add a bit more support to this structure. It's too flat, and it's gonna result in all of that. Of course, there can be circumstances in which you want those tones, but generally we try not to have them. Yeah. So right now I'm gonna do a hammering pass on this inner circle right next to the bell, just to make it not that flat and not that hammy. So I'm just gonna use a little oil pencil to mark the center, or rather just a line, right? Line. So you can see where we start on the cymbal and when we're done going one round.
Okay.
Okay. Then we've reached our marking, right? And so now if you look at the profile of the cymbal, it's actually slightly raised here.
Yeah.
So compared to just now, the sound is a little more complex, right? It's still very gongy. You can see that it vibrates a bit more. Right, so the tension has gone down. And generally for crash cymbals, you want to have a looser tension so that it opens up really easy. Right, so it's actually quite wide. Right, it's almost like this whole bit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just hammer it to support that section a little more. And that's gonna shift our structure up a bit. And then now we can take a look again. That particular tone is a lot less. Yeah, so that particular pitch is gone now, but there's other pitches that are now more prominent in the mix. And the whole thing about cymbal smithing is you have to balance all of these tones while balancing the stick sound and the wash, and then like your profile. Like if you hammer too much, it's gonna get too tall, and it's a very specific sound that can be a bit abrasive.
Yeah.
So you need to do all this in like moderation, and you need to like leave it for a long time. Sometimes you get ear fatigue. We're gonna come back to it later. Yeah. When you're swinging a hammer, right, you want to be very loose. You don't want to grip it like this, right? You want to be loose. Let the hammer absorb the rebound.
Yeah.
You don't want it to...
Basically how you play drums.
Yeah, basically like drums.
Let it bounce.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly like that, yeah.
How's it going?
It's okay, yeah, it's fine. You don't have to follow the line exactly, because the beauty of like hand hammered cymbals is that they're like kind of inaccurate. So you get all of these like differences compared to like, you know, machine hammered cymbals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it more human.
Yes, more imperfect. More character and such.
Is this gonna go to someone?
No. This one is like exclusively for people to try hammering.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna mess it
Yeah,
up.
it's fine if you screw it up. Don't worry. Yeah. Yeah.
In that case, I'm just gonna go.
That was a good blow.
Yeah. I should have tested it beforehand. I don't know what it sounded like before. Yes, it does sound tighter, huh?
Yeah. Okay, Singapore is like not a very like forward thinking kind of place. Like everyone's kind of like everyone's extremely cishet and like extremely like, you know, not very left leaning.
Yeah.
Right, so like it does suck sometimes because Singapore's like in Singapore you basically can't buy a house unless you're married, but you are not allowed to be married if you're gay. So it's like a catch-22, right? Which sucks, but I'd say like in terms of like direct practice, not really. If anything, like I've gotten some weird comments on like Instagram, but that's about it, right? Like just like, are you a boy or a girl? And then I just reply to them like, are you gonna have sex with me? Like, why should it matter, dude? I'm just talking about my cymbals, man. Shut up.
It shouldn't affect your work.
It shouldn't affect my work. Yeah, absolutely not. Singapore, if you're queer, it sucks. But no matter how much it sucks, there's also other people who are also sucking with you, and that's a bit comforting.
Yeah. We're all in it together.
Yeah. Being autistic thing might be good, actually, for the camera, right? 'Cause
How so?
I mean, it's just social media in general. Like, if you're too normal, you know, it's like whatever. Yeah. If you're a bit weird, then it's like, oh, this is interesting.
It helps with kind of the characteristics of you also end up in the symbols themselves too. Right? Nice. We nailed that. Good.